Hello, I'm Sam. I'm 21 living in a small town in Maine. Winters here are harsh and life moves slowly, but it's peaceful. Most days there's not much going on. People spend their time indoors sipping hot coffee and watching the snow quietly blanket everything in sight. It's the kind of town where everyone knows everyone else's stories and secrets rarely stay hidden. My routine is predictable. College classes during the day, occasional work shifts at the local hardware store, and evenings usually spent reading or playing video games. My parents have long moved south, leaving me with our old family house near the center of town. It's not a glamorous life, but I've grown comfortable with the simplicity, especially when winter comes. Even though the snow and cold can feel endless, there's something comforting about the stillness, the quiet isolation of it all. One of the few close connections I have here is with my best friend Ryan. We grew up together, attended the same schools, and spent countless winters building snow forts and sledding down hills behind his family's old house. Ryan's mom, Laura, recently moved back to town after a difficult divorce. She now lives alone just a few houses down from mine. Laura is 42, a high school teacher who always seems cheerful and composed. But Ryan once mentioned something that stuck with me. Laura has a deep fear of the dark triggered by something traumatic that happened when she was younger. I've never thought much about Laura beyond the usual respect for a friend's mom, but since she's moved back, I've found myself noticing her more. There's a quiet elegance about her, a gentle warmth hidden behind her frequent smiles. Sometimes I catch myself looking a bit longer than I should, quickly shaking off those thoughts and reminding myself that she's my best friend's mom. One evening, everything changed. The forecast warned us of a major snowstorm, nothing unusual for Maine. But when it hit, it was more intense than expected. Thick snowflakes swirled furiously, driven by gusting winds that howled around the old houses. Soon power across the entire town flickered and then vanished completely, plunging everything into darkness. I sat alone in my living room, lit by a single candle and the dying warmth of the fireplace, listening to the eerie silence that only a blackout in a snowstorm could bring. My thoughts drifted to Laura, suddenly remembering her fear. Without really thinking, I felt a sudden urgency to check on her. I pulled on my boots, heavy coat, and scarf, bracing myself for the cold, biting wind as I stepped outside. The world had transformed into an endless sea of white. The snow was deep, already making the short walk feel more difficult than usual. My breath came out in clouds as I trudged carefully down the street, glancing around at the darkened houses. Laura's house appeared especially quiet, with no lights visible in any of the windows. My heart clenched slightly, and I quickened my pace. When I finally reached her porch, I knocked gently on the door. There was no immediate response, and for a moment I wondered if she'd gone somewhere else, maybe to stay with friends. But then the door opened slowly, and Laura stood there, her face, pale eyes wide with barely contained anxiety. "Sam." Her voice was hesitant, clearly relieved, yet surprised to see me standing in the snow. "Hey, Laura," I said softly, trying to sound reassuring. "I just wanted to check in on you. Ryan once told me you don't like the dark, and I figured you might not want to be alone right now." She stared at me for a moment, processing my words. Then her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you," she said quietly, visibly touched. "You're right. I'm really glad you're here." I stepped inside, shaking snow off my boots as she closed the door behind me. The house felt unusually cold, and silent shadows dancing across the walls in the faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a box of matches I'd grabbed from home. "Do you have candles?" I asked gently. Laura nodded, pointing shakily toward the kitchen. "In the cabinet next to the stove." I quickly found them and lit several candles around the room. The warm, flickering glow immediately chased away some of the oppressive darkness, making the space feel safe and cozy again. Laura watched quietly, wrapping her arms around herself, clearly still unsettled. "Why don't we sit down?" I suggested, gently guiding her toward the couch. "Maybe we can talk a bit, distract you from the storm." She smiled weakly, grateful for my presence. As we settled onto the couch, surrounded by the comforting glow of candlelight, I found myself noticing her in ways I hadn't before. The soft shadows played gently across her face, highlighting the delicate lines around her eyes, the gentle curve of her lips, and the subtle strength beneath her vulnerability. For the first time, Laura wasn't just Ryan's mother. She was an incredibly beautiful woman, someone who seemed fragile yet undeniably appealing in this quiet, intimate moment. I quickly pushed the thought aside, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks, grateful for the dim lighting to hide it. Instead, I focused on helping her feel safe and comfortable. Do you want to talk about something? I asked, softly breaking the quiet. Maybe it'll help take your mind off the dark. Laura hesitated briefly, then nodded, taking a deep breath. It's silly, isn't it? A grown woman scared of the dark. It's just something happened when I was young. Since then, whenever it's dark and I'm alone, I feel helpless as trapped. It's not silly at all, I assured her gently. We all have fears. I'm glad you're letting me help you through this. She looked up, her eyes softening, clearly comforted by my understanding. Thank you, Sam. You being here means more than you know. As the snowstorm continued to rage outside, we fell into a quiet, comfortable rhythm of conversation. I began telling her stories, memories from my childhood, funny moments with Ryan, even small details about my life that I hadn't realized were important. In return, Laura began opening up, sharing snippets of her past, her struggles, and even small glimpses of her dreams and hopes for the future. With each moment that passed, I found myself feeling more drawn to her, captivated by her warmth and sincerity. Sitting there bathed in candlelight, I felt an undeniable pull toward her that I couldn't fully explain. It was gentle yet powerful, leaving me wondering how I'd missed seeing her like this all these years. In that quiet, candlelit room, something had undeniably changed. Laura was no longer just my best friend's mother. She was someone special, someone I wanted to protect, comfort, and know better. Though I didn't fully understand these newfound feelings, I knew one thing for certain. Tonight marked the beginning of something neither of us had anticipated, and I was eager yet cautious about where it would lead. We sat quietly in the soft glow of the candles, listening to the muffled sound of the storm outside. The occasional gust of wind made the old house creak gently, but inside the atmosphere was surprisingly peaceful. Laura had relaxed somewhat, her breathing steadier, and I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing my presence had helped soothe her fears, even if just a little. Thank you again, Sam. Laura finally broke the silence, her voice soft and sincere. I really don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come by tonight. I know it seems ridiculous, but ever since I was little, the dark has terrified me. It's not ridiculous, I said gently, shifting slightly on the sofa so I could face her better. We all have things that scare us. Do you want to talk about it? She hesitated for a moment, looking down at her hands clasped in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled slightly, revealing a vulnerability I'd never seen from her before. When I was 8 years old, she began quietly, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. I was home alone during a blackout like this. My parents had gone next door to help neighbors, promising they'd be back quickly. But then I heard noises, strange, frightening sounds, and my imagination took over. I hid under my bed, convinced something terrible was coming for me. They found me hours later, terrified and shaking. Since then, I've never been able to handle the darkness alone. I listened carefully, feeling deep empathy as she shared this intimate piece of her past. I understand why it still affects you, but I said gently. Trauma like that doesn't just disappear. She nodded clearly, grateful for my understanding. Most people don't take it seriously. They say I should just get over it. But it's not that simple. No, it's not. I agreed softly, holding her gaze reassuringly. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. Laura smiled warmly, visibly comforted by my words. Her smile, gentle and genuine, made something in my chest tighten slightly, a feeling I wasn't yet ready to fully explore. After a short silence, she turned the conversation toward me. What about you, Sam? You've been so kind and patient tonight, but I realize I hardly know much about your own life, your hopes, your dreams. I sighed quietly, leaning back into the sofa, staring thoughtfully into the candle flame. Honestly, I'm not really sure what I'm doing with my life right now. I admitted feeling comfortable enough to share my doubts openly. I've just finished college, but I don't have any real direction. Everyone else seems to have it figured out, bus, plans, goals. Meanwhile, I feel completely lost. Laura's eyes softened with understanding. She reached out, placing her hand gently on mine, a simple gesture yet incredibly comforting. You're not alone in feeling like that, she said softly. When I was your age, I felt exactly the same. It's okay not to have everything figured out. Life isn't a race, even though sometimes it feels that way. Her gentle reassurance touched something deep within me. Suddenly, Laura wasn't just Ryan's mom or a teacher. She was someone who truly understood what I was feeling, who made me feel seen and valued in a way I hadn't anticipated. I appreciate you saying that, I said sincerely, feeling warmth spread through me at her touch. It helps knowing someone understands. She squeezed my hand gently before pulling away, leaving behind an absence that felt surprisingly significant. I found myself wanting to reach out again, craving the warmth of her touch, but I held back, unsure if that was appropriate. Laura seemed to sense my slight discomfort, shifting the topic slightly to something lighter, more casual. You know, turning 40 was strange for me, she said, her tone joking, yet carrying a subtle undertone of genuine insecurity. Suddenly, I felt so much older. And after the divorce, it only intensified. I felt like I'd lost my youth, my attractiveness. Her words were casual, almost joking, yet the vulnerability beneath them was clear. Without thinking, I responded quickly, my voice serious and firm, surprising even myself with the depth of sincerity. Laura, please don't say that. You're still incredibly attractive and youthful. You're beautiful. Any man would be lucky to know you. The moment the words left my mouth, silence filled the room. Laura stared at me, her eyes wide with surprise, in a gentle vulnerability that made my heart race nervously. My face flushed, realizing I'd spoken openly, honestly, without considering how it might sound. I'm sorry if that was inappropriate. I murmured quickly, feeling embarrassed but unwilling to take back my words. But I meant every word. Laura slowly shook her head, eyes glistening softly, clearly moved by my earnestness. No, Sam, that's one of the kindest things anyone had said to me in a very long time. I guess I needed to hear it more than I realized. We sat quietly, the gentle flickering of the candles casting soft shadows on the walls. The intimacy of the moment was unmistakable, and a deep connection beginning to form between us, something entirely unexpected, yet undeniably real. I felt closer to Laura now than I'd ever thought possible. She spoke again, her voice thoughtful, almost shy. You know, sitting here with you tonight, I've felt more understood and comforted than I have in years. It surprises me because, in my mind, you're still the boy who grew up with Ryan. But you're not a boy anymore, are you? Her words made my pulse quicken slightly, my breath catching quietly. I met her eyes, holding her gaze earnestly. No, I suppose not. And you're not just Ryan's mom anymore. Not to me. You're someone special, someone who deserves to feel safe, appreciated, and beautiful. Laura smiled gently, visibly touched, her expression softening into one of deep gratitude and warmth. She reached out once more, gently placing her hand on mine, this time, lingering longer, allowing the quiet intimacy between us to deepen. Thank you, Sam, she whispered softly. Tonight you have given me more than just company. You've reminded me that I still matter, that I'm still valuable. We sat there quietly, savoring the gentle closeness between us, neither wanting to break the comforting silence. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside, we'd created a haven of warmth and understanding. I felt an unexpected yet powerful certainty no matter what happened next, this night had forever changed how we saw each other. Though I wasn't fully sure where these newfound feelings would lead, I knew one thing clearly. Laura had become someone incredibly important to me. And whatever happened next, I was ready to face it with sincerity and openness. The candles continued to flicker gently, their light softly illuminating Laura's living room and creating a safe, intimate space that felt entirely separate from the world outside. As the storm still howled faintly beyond the walls, our conversation gradually drifted deeper, touching upon hidden emotions and quiet pains we rarely shared with others. Laura leaned back slightly on the sofa, eyes thoughtful as she spoke again. Her voice was soft and reflective, filled with quiet melancholy. You know, Sam, after the divorce, I felt completely lost. It wasn't just the marriage that ended, it was a part of my identity. I spent so many years trying to keep our family together, trying to be the perfect wife and mother, that when it all fell apart, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I watched her quietly, feeling a strong sense of compassion at her words. The vulnerability she showed, the genuine hurt in her voice, made me ache to comfort her. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been, I said gently, hoping my sincerity was clear. Laura smiled faintly, nodding in gratitude for my understanding. There were days I couldn't get out of bed. I felt worthless, abandoned, and completely alone. But the hardest part wasn't losing my marriage, it was losing hope. I've been afraid ever since, worried that I'll never find happiness again. Her voice wavered slightly, eyes glistening softly in the candlelight. My heart tightened as I saw tears welling up slowly, slipping down her cheeks. Without thinking, I reached over and gently took her hand in mine, offering silent comfort. Her skin was warm and soft, trembling slightly under my touch. She looked at me, surprise briefly crossing her face, quickly replaced by an expression of gentle relief. We sat quietly for a long moment, neither speaking, simply absorbing the quiet intimacy of the moment. My thumb gently brushed over the back of her hand in an instinctive gesture meant to soothe. Her breathing gradually steadied, and I felt her hand relax slightly within mine. Eventually, Laura broke the silence again, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Sam, I haven't felt this comfortable, this safe in a very long time. It's strange. I've known you since you were a kid, and yet tonight you've made me feel more understood than anyone else has in years. I swallowed hard, heart racing, as I met her gaze, recognizing the weight of her words. Laura, I feel the same way. I've spent so long feeling alone, feeling like nobody truly sees who I am or understands what I'm going through. But tonight with you, I feel different, like someone finally sees me clearly. Her eyes softened further, the warmth between us intensifying with every word exchanged. Still, Laura hesitated, clearly torn about her own feelings. But Sam, she continued softly, there are so many complications. I'm twice your age and you're Ryan's best friend. It scares me how strongly I feel connected to you. I worry about what would happen if anyone found out. Her honesty touched something deep inside me, prompting me to respond with equal sincerity. I know exactly what you mean, I admitted softly, squeezing her hand gently. I've been wrestling with those same fears, worrying about Ryan, about the age difference and how others might judge us. But Laura, no matter how hard I try, I can't deny these feelings. They're too real, too important. Laura looked deeply into my eyes, clearly moved by my honesty. She exhaled softly, nodding slowly in agreement. I can't deny it either. It's overwhelming and frightening, yet somehow it feels incredibly right. We fell into another quiet pause, letting the significance of our shared admissions settle between us. Outside, the storm seemed to have all quieted slightly, though neither of us paid it much attention now. Our world was entirely contained within the gentle flicker of candlelight, within the warmth of our shared connection. Finally, Laura spoke again, her voice quiet yet resolute. Sam, maybe we don't need to have all the answers tonight. Maybe it's okay just to acknowledge this feeling, to let ourselves experience it without having to define exactly what it means yet. I smiled softly, deeply, grateful for her maturity and thoughtfulness. I think that's exactly what we should do, I agreed gently. We can figure everything out slowly. The important thing is that we're honest with each other. Laura nodded, smiling tenderly. Honesty and openness. That's exactly what I need right now, and you're giving me that. I felt a warmth radiating through me, a powerful yet quiet certainty that what we shared was genuinely special. Without consciously deciding, I found myself leaning slightly closer to Laura. She met me halfway, her forehead lightly resting against mine, a gesture full of tenderness and trust. Neither of us moved to go further, simply savoring the gentle closeness, our breathing soft and synchronized. I'm scared. Sam, she whispered softly, eyes briefly closing in gentle vulnerability. Not just of the dark, but of opening myself up again, of trusting someone and risking getting hurt again. I'm scared too, I admitted quietly, my voice gentle yet steady. But I'm also more certain about this, about us, than I've been about anything in a very long time. She opened her eyes again, holding my gaze steadily, searching for reassurance and finding it clearly reflected in my expression. You really mean that, don't you? She asked softly, voice barely audible. With all my heart, I responded quietly, gently cupping her cheek in my hand, my thumb softly wiping away a lingering tear. We'll navigate this carefully, respectfully, but I don't want to lose what we found tonight. It means too much. Laura smiled gently, visibly comforted by my words. She reached up slowly, softly, covering my hand with her own, leaning slightly into my touch. Her voice trembled slightly, yet held quiet strength. I trust you, Sam, more than I've trusted anyone in a very long time. We remained close like that for a long moment, allowing our connection to deepen even further. Eventually, we leaned back slightly, but our hands remained gently intertwined, a silent acknowledgement of the bond we'd formed. The storm outside seemed distant now, insignificant compared to the intensity of what we'd shared. We knew there were challenges ahead, questions to answer, complications to face. But in that moment, we chose simply to savor the quiet intimacy we'd created, comforted by the genuine understanding and affection that bound us together. As the candles burned lower, casting softer shadows across the room, I felt an unspoken promise passing quietly between us, a mutual willingness to explore the depth of our feelings slowly, carefully, and with the respect they deserved. We weren't rushing headlong into uncertainty. Instead, we were cautiously embracing something rare and beautiful that had emerged naturally between us. Sitting there with Laura, I felt more certain than ever before about one thing: this unexpected connection had profoundly changed both of us. And no matter where our journey led, neither of us would ever forget this gentle, life-changing night. The hours passed quietly, each minute stretching out gently into the next, as Laura and I remained close, held together by the tender bond we'd forged during that long candlelit night. The storm outside gradually softened into silence, leaving only a fresh blanket of snow and a serene stillness that enveloped the small town. Yet neither of us paid much attention to the changing weather. Our entire focus centered on the peaceful, comforting space we had created between us. We spent the night talking quietly, sharing stories of our lives, our dreams, our fears, and everything in between. There was no rush, no pressure, just honest, heartfelt conversation that brought us closer together. Though the physical closeness we shared was limited to the occasional gentle touch of hands or a comforting embrace, the emotional intimacy that formed was deep and meaningful. Laura rested her head gently on my shoulder as we sat together, wrapped in blankets on her couch, surrounded by the warmth of candlelight. We spoke quietly about memories from the past, dreams for the future, and the quiet fears we held for what lay ahead. The gentle rhythm of our breathing, the steady beating of our hearts, created a sense of harmony and understanding neither of us had experienced in a long while. Eventually, the darkness outside the windows began to soften into shades of pale gray and pink, signaling the arrival of dawn. At nearly the same moment, a low hum filled the room as the power was restored, lights flickering back to life throughout Laura's house. We both glanced upward, briefly acknowledging the end of our shared isolation. Yet neither of us moved immediately. Instead, we remained quietly together for a few more precious minutes, savoring the gentle intimacy we'd found. Finally, Laura lifted her head slowly, meeting my gaze with a tender yet slightly melancholic smile. "It looks like our quiet night is over," she said softly, gently squeezing my hand. Her voice was tinged with regret and sadness, knowing we had to face the realities waiting beyond this perfect, isolated moment. "I suppose it is," I replied quietly, feeling a sense of loss already settling within me. "But I'm so glad we had tonight." Laura nodded slowly, her expression becoming more serious, thoughtful. "Sam, before you go, I think we need to talk a bit about the future." My heart tightened slightly, knowing this conversation was inevitable, yet feeling a gentle anxiety rising within me. Of course, I responded softly, preparing myself for her words. She took a slow, steady breath before continuing, her voice gentle, yet resolute. "What happened tonight, the connection we felt, it was real. I haven't felt so genuinely understood, valued, and comfortable in years. But at the same time, we both know there are challenges ahead of us, our age difference, our relationship with Ryan, and what people might say. It worries me deeply." I nodded slowly, understanding her concerns, entirely sharing them myself. I know I agreed quietly. "Those worries have been on my mind too, but Laura, what I feel for you is real, powerful, and undeniable. I don't want to simply let it go." Her eyes softened, clearly touched by my sincerity. "I feel exactly the same way, Sam. I just don't want either of us to rush into something without fully considering the consequences." We sat quietly for a long moment, allowing the weight of her words to settle between us. Finally, I spoke gently yet firmly, wanting to reassure her. "We don't need to rush anything. Let's just take our time. We can keep this between us for now, explore our feelings slowly, and see where they lead us. There's no pressure to define or reveal anything immediately." Laura exhaled softly, visibly relieved by my response. Her eyes glistened gently as she smiled warmly, nodding in agreement. "Thank you, Sam. That's exactly what I needed to hear." "You're right. There's no need to hurry." A gentle silence filled the room again, carrying quiet acceptance and shared understanding. Eventually, Laura rose slowly from the couch and I followed, sensing it was time for me to leave. We stood quietly near the doorway facing each other with an unspoken acknowledgement of everything we'd shared and all that still remained unsaid. Laura reached out slowly, softly, touching my cheek, her gaze tender and affectionate. "Thank you for tonight, Sam," she murmured softly, sincerity filling her voice. "We don't have to rush anything. Let's just see where these feelings take us." Her words resonated deeply within me, filling me with quiet hope and certainty. I smiled gently, reaching up to cover her hand with mine, holding it briefly against my cheek. I couldn't agree more. Let's trust ourselves and each other to figure this out at our own pace. We stood quietly like that for a moment longer, savoring the gentle closeness, neither wanting to end the precious intimacy we discovered. Eventually, Laura stepped back slightly, though our eyes remained locked together in quiet reassurance. "I'll see you soon, Sam," she said softly, a gentle promise hidden in her words. I nodded slowly, smiling warmly. "Yes, you will." Stepping outside into the cold morning air, I felt a strange mixture of joy and gentle sadness. The fresh snowfall covered the town in a layer of pristine beauty, yet I was acutely aware of the quiet ache of leaving Laura behind. Still, I knew it was the right choice, giving ourselves space and time to carefully navigate this unexpected connection we'd formed. As I walked slowly home, my thoughts remained with Laura, the gentle warmth of her presence, the sincerity in her eyes, and the quiet strength she'd shared throughout the night. No matter how complicated the future might become, I felt certain about one thing. My heart had found something profoundly genuine and deeply meaningful in Laura, something worth protecting and cherishing. No matter how long it took us to find our way clearly, our decision wasn't an easy one, filled with complexities and potential obstacles. Yet we chose to trust our hearts in each other, deciding to face whatever lay ahead, slowly, deliberately, and thoughtfully. Neither of us knew exactly where this path would lead, but we were ready to explore it carefully, guided by the sincerity and honesty we'd shown each other that night. As I arrived back at my house, the quiet solitude welcomed me home. Yet it no longer felt empty. My heart now carried a quiet certainty, a gentle hopefulness, and a deep connection to Laura. Whatever our future might hold, I knew we'd navigate it carefully, respectfully, and with mutual understanding and genuine affection. The night of the storm had changed us both profoundly, revealing hidden depths and unexpected feelings. Now, as daylight broke fully over our small town, we faced a new beginning, one filled with cautious optimism, quiet trust, and gentle, heartfelt hope. The story of Sam and Laura unveils a profound life lesson. True connection often emerges from moments of vulnerability where empathy and presence can transform fear into hope. During a fierce Maine blizzard, Sam's instinctive decision to check on Laura, knowing her deep fear of the dark, sparks an unexpected bond. Laura, a woman who hid her pain behind a composed exterior, finds solace in Sam's quiet strength, revealing her past traumas and loneliness. Their candlelit night, filled with honest conversations, teaches us that showing up for someone in their moment of need, no matter how small it seems, can forge a powerful, authentic connection. It's a reminder that we all carry hidden fears, and offering understanding without judgment can heal wounds we didn't know existed. Sam and Laura's cautious steps toward exploring their feelings, despite societal norms and personal doubts, inspire us to embrace vulnerability in our own lives, trusting that genuine bonds are worth the risk. This tale stirs the heart, urging us to be the person who stays, who listens, and who dares to care deeply even when the path is uncertain. Have you ever found a meaningful connection by being there for someone in a tough moment? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how it shaped you. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories that ignite hope and courage. Your support keeps these heartfelt tales alive. Join our community, and let's celebrate the power of human connection together.